it's Reija, and it's time for another anime-related video. Last time I did one, I talked about all the nostalgic series I watched as a child, which you can check over here if you want. And today, in honor of the first anniversary since Yuri on Ice came out and caused a huge splash, I decided that I would do a recommendations video based on all the LGBTQ plus anime that I've seen. So think of this as an LGBTQ plus anime starter pack, if you will. And I have a few guidelines that this series I'm recommending need to match in order to qualify for this list. And they are: 1. I need to have watched the series. 2. When it was airing or released, it was not marketed as BL or Boys Love or Yuri, so it was not marketed for straight women or straight men. And number 3 is that it has canon LGBTQ plus main characters, not side characters, though they are also included, but actual main characters. With that in mind, let's move on to the series I want to recommend. First, I want to talk about number 6, which is a science fiction dystopian, and it follows the story of a young boy called Shion who discovers this runaway boy called Nezumi one night and decides to hide him as he is being searched by the authorities. And years later, Shion is a scientist and he meets up with Nezumi again after encountering a sort of government conspiracy, and they need to team up in order to prevail. And they have a really nice relationship. It is kind of a slow burn. First up, there's that feeling that Shion is very curious about Nezumi in a kind of scientific way, and then they build up a friendship which eventually leads into romance. And it is a very beautiful series that tackles issues such as humanity, as Nezumi is a person that has basically lost his personhood because of scientific experiments done to him. And there's also themes of change, as Shion himself is altered both physically and mentally during this series. And I would highly recommend it. It is very pretty to look at. It has a very beautiful soundtrack and the story is beautiful. And out of the series on this little list, it is probably the most melancholy, but it is also very hopeful. Moving on to a completely different series, I want to talk about Samurai Flamenco. Samurai Flamenco is a science fiction superhero parody, and it takes inspiration from old Sentai classics such as Kamen Rider and Power Rangers. And it basically is about a police officer called Goto who encounters this young man called Masayoshi, who wants to be a hero more than anything. So he tries his hardest to do kind of everyday heroic activities such as stop people from littering or stealing other people's umbrellas, etc. And these escapades sometimes lead him to be treated like a public nuisance, where Goto comes in because he's a police officer. And little by little, the slice of life aspect of the series kind of changes into a more parodic, satirical type when they encounter like actual villains and monsters in a typical fashion of a Sentai series. During the course of this series, Goto and Masayoshi first develop a kind of co-workership or working relationship, then they start to become friends, and Masayoshi kind of idolizes Goto, and in the end they become an actual canonical couple. And the series also has some lesbian side characters as well, which kind of juxtapose the relationship between Goto and Masayoshi as it develops. You kind of see the lesbian side couple as a kind of foil to them almost. And It is a very fun series. It is really funny to me because I grew up watching Sentai series, and it is always a pleasure seeing an actual queer main character in a superhero role. It is very refreshing. Third up on my list, I want to talk about Wandering Sun, which is a beautiful animation that has a kind of watercolor style, and it's very stylized and beautiful. And it's also a very short series. It's about 12 or 13 episodes. And it follows the story of a transgender girl called Suichi, and her friendships with other kids in her school, and her attempts to come to terms with her gender expression and gender identity, and also how that falls into the Japanese society, because Japan is a very patriarchal society in many ways, and Suichi can't really express herself in the way that she would want. And the story starts when she is in elementary school, and she has a friend called Yoshino who is a bit of a tomboy and also wants to come to terms with her own gender identity and whether or not she actually identifies as a female at all. And it is a very beautiful series. It is very hopeful, even though Suichi goes through a lot of trauma and bullying because of her attempts to try and become female presenting in a very patriarchal society that doesn't allow her to express herself. And I really love this series. I also have the manga, and the manga is very beautiful as well. It kind of follows the story a bit further, and I would absolutely recommend the manga as well if you like the anime. And last up, I want to talk about a classic, and that is revolutionary girl Utena, the mother of all female-female anime relationships. And Utena is very stylized, it is very fashionable looking, it is very sleek and tremendously beautiful, and has that sort of aesthetic that will stick in your mind for a long time. And it follows the story of Utena, who has always wanted to be a prince and has admired princes ever since she was very much impressed by a kind prince in her childhood. And she attends Otori Academy, where she encounters Anthe, a kind of mysterious, chic girl. And Anthe is in a very abusive relationship, and Utena decides that she will have none of it and decides to confront Anthe's partner and challenges him to a duel. And it turns out that Anthe is what they call a rose bride, and as Utena has now won her hand, she must protect Anthe and duel other would-be suitors. And that's basically the very bare bones gist of the story. It is very complex. There is a lot of different characters and lots of different themes. Utena and Anthe are both what would probably be categorized as bi. They both have relationships with male characters, but the central relationship is between the two of them, and they are definitely in a romantic relationship that is very much canon. The show also has bisexual male characters and also lesbian female characters that are very central to the plot. And the series is very beautiful to look at, and it's not incredibly long either. It is about 35-36 episodes, and I would highly recommend it. It is very funny, it has its dark moments and its hopeful moments, and I just loved every moment of it. And that is actually kind of a central theme for all of these series. They are full of hope, and even though they get a bit dark sometimes, they maintain that positive attitude in the end. And I think that is very much needed in the LGBTQ plus community, some escapism, some hope, some feeling of elation, and that feeling that we can be heroes. And I find it very awesome that in this series we have these main characters who are LGBTQ plus characters, and they are presented as heroes. And that is it for today's video. If you have some other LGBTQ plus anime recommendations that I haven't mentioned or I don't know about, please share them into comments. I would very much want to check them out as well. And if you like this video, consider giving the thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more. And I will see you in the next video. Bye bye!